Hi everyone, welcome back to my top 500 games, and we are currently at number 321, and it is Gravity Rush. This is a PS Vita game, and I don't know if it was one of the launch games on the Vita, but I do believe it was one of the early games on the Vita that was used to market the Vita, I think. But the reason I got this game is because it was free on PS Plus one time, and with the way that PS Vita memory cards are, it's very hard to download loads of files at once, so I ended up having to delete it eventually. But thanks to my PS Plus subscription, I managed to maintain the save file, so that's alright. But anyway, the way that Gravity Rush works is that it's kind of like this 3D adventure game, apart from you have this special ability whereby you can turn gravity off so that you will float in the air, and then you can launch yourself towards a specific target, and when you do that, if you land, gravity will be based on the way that you landed. So you might have gravity land a particular way, and you can tell by the way that the character's hair is flowing which way gravity of her is compared to, you know, the actual down gravity. The game was focused around combat and collecting things. I suppose that's the way that I can describe it. And combat also used this gravity mechanic, so you'd float in the air and you could launch yourself towards the enemy. And the way that it worked is that you had like a series of different challenges, and depending on how well you did in the challenges, you got points, and then you could use those points to like power up or level up different stats and abilities and stuff. So, if I'm remembering this correctly, you don't necessarily have a sort of experience system where you kill enemies and therefore you get experience, so to speak, but rather you have different challenges, and it depends on how far you rank on these individual challenges to what power-ups you get. Of course, you can go and do some challenges, get so many points, and then come back and when you've got more strength and stuff, and then do it all again. I didn't play it all that much really, but the main thing I remember about this game, in terms of my memories, in terms of, you know, experiences and stuff, was that I first played this in the car. I was in my dad's car and we were going somewhere, and I had to turn the whole gyroscope thing off, because the way that it works is that you've got these cutscenes which are like these comic strips, and you can move the Vita around to get a different angle on the comic strip. And of course, because we're on the car and everything's bumping over things and stuff, I ended up having the camera sort of twist and turn all these weird angles. I just had to turn it off. I think the only reason they really added that to begin with was because of realism or something like that. Like, oh, immersive, check out this new feature on the PS Vita, that type of thing. Number 320 is a game called Jumper, and this is referring to someone who jumps. It's not referring to a thing that you wear. It's a character that jumps. It's a platform game, which you can probably tell by the name Jumper. But I believe that there was a game called Jumper on the GameCube, which was based on a film or something. I don't know. I'm not talking about that game. I'm talking about the game that was made in Game Maker called Jumper, the one where you play as Ogmo. It's become a rather popular indie game, or at least it did when it came out. It became rather well known. It actually also became a character on Super Meat Boy, so it was that level of fame on the indie scene, I suppose. And the best way I can describe it is that it's just a basic platformer, apart from the fact that you have a double jump, which plays a rather large part in this game. Double jumping these days isn't a big deal, it's just a thing that all games seem to do, but in this particular game, it used it quite a lot. So sometimes you could, for example, fall and then jump so that you could make it through this dead gap in this electric field. And sometimes you could collect up arrows, which meant that you could do an extra jump in that cycle. So there was a lot of maneuvering and stuff. And you did have different levels with different themes. And I seem to remember there was lots of lasers around and a lot of laser dodging and stuff like that. I also remember there was a level editor in this game, although I may be confusing it with something else, I'm not sure, but I believe there was a level editor in this game whereby you could change the music, and included in the music selection was Kefka's theme from Final Fantasy VI, which was unusual, but okay. Number 319 is Disney's Tarzan on the PS1. This is a game that I have very little to say about, because my memories of it aren't too strong. But I did enjoy this game, and I do remember that I did enjoy the graphical style, and I like the whole 2.5D, and you had to collect the letters to spell Tarzan. And it was basically one of those film games where it sort of like took you through the stages of the film as you went through the game. But that's really, my memories of this game aren't too strong. I don't have too much nostalgia about this game, so I'm just going to move on from there. Number 318 is Treasure Island Dizzy. Now this is a game I do have a story about, because I played this game on the Amiga, and the way that I got the game was that I looked in one of our cupboards and it was just there. I didn't have it. Maybe my parents bought it for me as like a Christmas or birthday present or something, or maybe it just came with something and they just left it to one side and they forgot to tell me, or they just didn't know what it was, or I don't know. I don't know the story. I just remember the game was just there in the cupboard. So I did ask about what it was and if I could play it, and they were saying yes, 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 fine, whatever. I don't know if I ruined a surprise. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. Maybe I ruined a birthday surprise or whatever and they just let me have it there and then. But I can't say for sure. But I played this game, and I remember this game is rather specifically a puzzly, platformy game. I guess you would call it that. The way that it works is that you control Dizzy, who's this egg character, who was actually a very popular character in the old UK home computer market, which I never really got into the Dizzy series in general, but I played this game. And the way that it works is you can hold up to 3 items at once, and the way that it works is you pick up an item, and picking up an item adds it to your inventory, and the button that you press to pick up an item is the same button that you press to use an item. And so the way that that works is that it sort of moves up the list every time you press the button. So you might pick up an item and it'll appear in your 3rd inventory slot, and then if you go to another item and pick up another item, you will pick up the new item, which will push the item in your 3rd slot up to your 2nd slot, and that item would go into the 3rd slot. And so when you had an item to the top of your list and you press the button again, it would drop the item above. And so what this meant was that you had to use the items in the order that you picked them up in. Now, I hear all sorts of stuff about how, oh, it was a technical limitation, how they couldn't go like about doing this in any way. And there's a podcast out there, I can't remember what it's called. It's like the something retro podcast. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. It's like 1H something podcast. I don't know. But regardless, you can search it by searching Oliver Twins Dizzy podcast. You might be able to find it that way. But what they were talking about this game, and they were saying that yes, it was technological limitation, that they weren't able to make it so that you could use the items in any particular orders, that you did have to use them in the order that you picked them up. But what they were saying, and this is something I agree with, is that this added an extra puzzle element of the game. Because, see, I have actually played this game since then. I played it on a NES emulator, because in the late 2000s I discovered a YouTube channel which isn't there anymore, unfortunately, but I really liked it at the time, someone called Dentalux, and he made Dizzy videos, and I watched the different videos, but I watched the one on Treasure Island Dizzy, which I actually found because I originally saw Armake's video on the Quattro Adventure on the NES, which I'm going into all sorts here, but he was saying that the game gets too much hate, and that yes, there are things such as you being hit once does cause you to die, but it's a very short game, and it is a very short game. And the way that you do have this inventory swapping around thing does actually work with the game, because another example I can give is that there's one part where you have to travel underwater, and in order to go underwater, you have to have a snorkel equipped. Now, if you have a snorkel equipped, which means you have it in your inventory, that means that you can't pick up an item in the water and then use it in the water. You have to get out of the water so that you can then drop the snorkel, drop the thing, then pick up the thing, and then pick up the snorkel so that you can use it without having to drop the snorkel first, if that makes any sense. And whilst it sounds annoying and silly, there are points in the game where this type of maneuverability thing, I think, really helps the game. I think it really makes it better because of that. But the idea of the game is you have to find these pieces and go around and collect all the coins and escape from the island. It's as simple as that. I have completed the game since then, like as in I've escaped from the island, but I haven't collected all the coins. I think I missed 1 coin. Number 317 is The Page Master. This was a game on the Mega Drive that I had, and I had never actually seen The Page Master, the film. I don't think I've seen it properly now. I think I've had it sort of in the background, but I've never properly watched the film. But the way that this game worked is that it's a 2D platformer where you go through the different worlds. There's horror, adventure, and fantasy, which are the three book characters, if I can count to 3. This is top 500 games and I can't count to 3. But yeah, you go through those 3 different worlds, and the level select screen is sort of like this grid where you walk along different paths and you select your level. And what was really strange about this is that a lot of the time you had multiple routes that you could go. Like sometimes you could go the top route or you could go down the bottom route, and you could go different ways. And I think the reason that you would want to go all routes, and there were some levels where it sort of led to a dead end in the level select path, but I think the reason you wanted to do that was so that you could get all the library cards and go through all the special stages and get everything that way. And even within the different worlds there were different styles of levels. So for example, in the horror world you had the castle levels, and then you also had like the graveyard levels, so there was still that level of variety even within the different worlds. It's a pretty typical platformer, I suppose, running, jumping, collecting items, and you also get these power-ups that will allow you to bounce off walls, and the controls are a bit finicky, they're a bit floaty, I suppose. And you also have these different items like rocks and stuff that you can pick up and move around to use as different platforms. And the idea was to find the book at the end, whereby if you get into the book, then that's sort of like the signpost to say that you completed the level. I seem to remember that if you picked up your library card, then what that meant was that when you completed the level, you sort of went into this 3D, sort of like a Space Harrier-esque bonus level where you flew forward and you had to avoid the different pillars and get to the end, and I don't remember exactly what the reward of that was. I also remember that each world there was a particular weapon that you could get. So for example, in the horror world you could pick up these eyeballs that you could throw at the enemies, and in adventure you got a sword, and in fantasy you got this magic fairy dust. But you could also carry the power-ups, these weapons, between different worlds. So if you had the eyeballs and then you went into the adventure world, you still had the eyeballs, you didn't lose them, you still had it. And I also have a fond memory of playing this game on a small black and white TV for some reason. I don't remember, I mean I had a TV, but I think it might have broken or something, so I had like this temporary small black and white one, and I had fond memories of playing the game on that small black and white TV. Also, there was no final boss. You just got to the end of the last level and then you completed the game. That was weird. Number 316 is a game called Luftrausers. Now, apparently this is a made-up word, so I know it sounds like it's a German word, but I've heard it's a made-up word. But anyway, it's one of those very modernized type of mobile type games where you have this little challenge arena thing to do, and you just have to keep doing it, and as you do it, you will get different goals to unlock, and once you've completed those different goals, you will then get points, and you can spend points on powering up different weapons. What's also quite interesting about this game is the colour scheme, but also that you fly around and it's like you shoot out different types of weapons and you shoot all these enemies, but the way that your health works is that you using like this turbocharge sort of like drains your health, and so you being hit, if you just drop down for a bit, you will recover. It's a very strange thing and it's very hard to explain, but yeah, that's the way that works. Number 315 is Sonic Adventure. Now, this is a game that has, in recent times, gotten a lot of hate, and people saying that it's just not a very good game in general. I would kind of have to disagree. I think that, in some regards, people saying that this is a great game, I think they're wrong. I think it's not that great. Calm down. I think it's a decent game. I think it's an alright game. I really can't sing too much of a praise about it. I didn't actually complete this game because I got stuck at one point on Sonic's story. I remember I wasn't able to find out where I needed to go in Station Square. But if you don't know the way this works, it's a Sonic game, and it's sort of like the first 3D Sonic game, like the first proper 3D rather than just graphically manipulated 3D, if you know what I mean, with Sonic, the game Sonic 3D. And you have to go around and just do these individual different levels. And I had this hub world, so you had the Station Square, and you could go into the train to go to the Mystic Ruins, and you just had this series of levels to complete. Now, this game's big infamous point about it that people really hate on it for is the cat stages, and yes, they are awful. I know they are awful. People also don't like the Amy stages, but honestly, I like the Amy stages. I like that level of platforming because, I don't know, people complain that she's slow, but I liked it. I didn't ever see a problem with it. I never really did much of the Chow Garden in this game because I know this game does have a Chow Garden, and I never really got into it, but I sort of acknowledged it and didn't really do anything else beyond that. But my main memories of this game are unlocking the other earlier like Master System Sonic games in the main menu from the, and this is the the GameCube version of the game where you could do this. And I know this is, I'm not saying that this is a reason why I like the game because, you know, it's kind of silly. This isn't part of the original game and I'm talking about other games here, but one of the memories I have is playing this and just unlocking these earlier games and then playing those earlier games, these Master System Sonic games. And really having a lot of fun doing that. And I also remember that you have the different types of levels, so you have the Sonic and the Tails levels, which are fine. You also have the Knuckles levels, which I still didn't really like all that much. The Amy levels I liked, the Gamma levels I thought were okay. But yeah, it's just a decent game. I first played it on the GameCube, and yeah, that's that. The next game, number 314, is Lego Races. Now, this is going back a long time now, but Lego games now are just about taking an existing franchise like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Marvel, something like that, and having this very particular type of gameplay slapped onto it. I'm not going to speak anything of the quality of those games because I know too little about them, but that's what Lego games are now. But what Lego games used to be is that they were more about the creative side of Lego, what Lego originally was about, you know, being creative and building things. And this is a typical kart racing game, I suppose you could say. The way that it worked with weapons is that you picked up a Lego block, whether it be like a red one, which was like the shooting one, like the shooty projectile ones, the yellow ones, which allowed you to drop things behind you, the green ones, which were the speed up ones, and the blue ones, which were the shield. And the way that it worked is that you picked up the white block to sort of level up the type of colour weapon that you had. So the red one, it would be like cannonball, it would go into a grappling hook, and eventually it would turn into something else. And I believe that the last stage was the equivalent of the blue shell. I don't remember exactly what the third one was, or maybe the third one was the grappling hook where you sort of pulled yourself forward. But yeah, there's like these different stages. With the shields, it became just a basic shield, and then the shield sort of got stronger. I don't know exactly how it got stronger over time, but I remember it changed colour, and like for example, it may be, I might be wrong here, it may be that the first shield, like, it gets destroyed once it's hit, and the second shield, like, doesn't get destroyed when it's hit, it's just there for so much time. But I remember the final shield, items bounced back off it. With the yellow ones, you had the oil thing, which caused the player to slip on, whoever it was that landed on it to slip, and then that went to other things, and then finally it went into this curse one whereby it was like this evil curse where if you drove into it you would lose control over your car for a bit. And the green one, which was my favourite, was like the turbo ones. It was just faster, faster, faster. But if you got all of the white blocks on top of the green block, you could use it and use this time warp ability where you would just flash through time and you would just appear later in the race. I used to play this game with my uncle quite a lot. This is my uncle who was into racing games, I mentioned when I was talking about Formula 1, and he used to say, no time warping, only because he could do it. And I was just like, no, I'm time warping because the game lets me do it, I'm time warping. But yeah, also in this game, you unlock different block sets for different like Lego pieces by completing the different levels. So first you had Captain Redbeard, and then you had like the Tiki person, like Aztec Mayan type character, and you had like this alien one and Joan of Arc, and you eventually got to these levels where it was like the flipped versions of the previous levels, and the final level was the Rocket Racer, I think. It was called something like Rocket Race. It was like the symbol of Lego races, where it was just pure about being the racing champion. And I remember beating that and, yeah, completing those levels and getting all of those things. So yeah, thank you for listening and watching. I realise I went through quite a lot of detail with the games in this list, but you know, we're getting higher on the list, and that's what happens. The higher you get, the more detail you tend to go in. Not always, but it tends to go that way. But I'm just going to end this part here. So thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!